In the 41st millennium, there is only war. The Imperium of Man spans 1,000,000 worlds, held together by faith, fire, and the blood of countless billions. Into this nightmare of endless conflict, something impossible arrives. A spark of speed and hope from a universe that still believes in heroes. The Flash, fastest man alive, is about to learn that in the grim darkness of the far future, even light struggles to outrun the shadows. The sky above Hive Tertius split open, not with the roiling madness of a warp breach, nor the clean geometry of a webway portal. This was something else entirely, a jagged tear in reality itself, crackling with crimson and gold lightning that obeyed no laws the Imperium's savants could categorize. For 3 seconds, the rift screamed with impossible colors, and then it vomited forth a single figure wreathed in electrical fire. Barry Allen hit the rockcrete at terminal velocity. The impact crater measured 15 meters across. Dust and debris mushroomed outward in a perfect circle, shattering windows in the nearest Manufactorum hab blocks. Klaxons wailed immediately. On the city walls, Astra Militarum gunners swiveled their autocannons toward the impact site, fingers tightening on triggers, waiting for whatever Xenos horror had just arrived. Barry groaned, pushing himself upright. Every nerve ending screamed. His connection to the Speed Force felt like trying to hear a whisper through a hurricane. There, definitely there, but distorted by something massive and angry pressing against his consciousness. The warp. He didn't know the word yet, but he felt its presence like psychic static crawling across his skin. "Okay," he muttered, checking himself for injuries. Red suit intact, though scorched at the edges. No broken bones, accelerated healing already working, albeit slower than normal. Definitely not Kansas, not even Earth. Where the hell? The scream cut through his assessment. His head snapped toward the sound, his eyes, still able to process information at superhuman speed despite the interference, took in the scene in microseconds. 300 meters away, beyond a labyrinth of industrial structures, a crowd of civilians fled through narrow streets. Behind them, something massive and green charged forward with impossible speed for its bulk. An orc. 12 feet of muscle, tusks, and badly welded armor, wielding a crude chain axe that roared with mechanical fury. Behind it, a dozen more of its kind howled with bloodlust, firing crude automatic weapons that sprayed bullets with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Barry didn't think. 27 years of being a hero overrode confusion, disorientation, and the alien strangeness pressing against his mind. He ran. The world blurred. Not as smoothly as he was used to, the Speed Force connection stuttered, forcing him to consciously push harder to maintain velocity, but fast enough. To the fleeing civilians, he was a crimson streak, a lightning bolt given human form. To the orcs, he was there and then he wasn't, a confusing red thing that defied their simple understanding of combat. Barry reached the lead orc in 0.3 seconds. His fist, accelerated to hypersonic velocity and wreathed in Speed Force lightning, caught the Xenos under its jaw. The impact generated a thunderclap that shattered nearby windows. The orc's head snapped back with enough force to break its thick neck, and the massive body tumbled backward into 2 of its fellows. "Everyone run!" Barry shouted to the civilians. They stared at him with expressions that transcended fear. These weren't looks of relief. They were looks of confusion and terror at something they couldn't understand. Wrong response. He'd saved people 1,000 times. They should be... Bullets stitched the ground where he'd been standing a heartbeat ago. Barry moved, dodging on instinct, weaving between the crude rounds with ease despite his diminished connection. The orcs bellowed in frustration, unable to track something moving faster than their eyes could follow. He disarmed them systematically. A vibrating hand through a gun barrel, molecular disruption turning metal into useless slag. A supersonic punch to a knee joint, shattering the bone despite the Xenos' incredible durability. Another orc down, then another. Barry pulled his punches. Even here, wherever here was, he wouldn't kill if he could avoid it. But the orcs didn't retreat. They charged harder, laughing with manic glee, swinging blades and shooting wildly. Barry felt his stomach turn. They were enjoying this, not just fighting, reveling in violence for its own sake. The last orc fell after Barry circled it 17 times in 2 seconds, creating a vortex of displaced air that lifted the massive creature off its feet and slammed it into a rockcrete wall hard enough to crack both. Silence fell over the street. Barry stood among the fallen Xenos, breathing hard, harder than he should be after such a brief engagement. The speed force flickered in his chest like a candle in a windstorm. He turned to the civilians he'd saved. They weren't celebrating. They were backing away. "It's okay," Barry said, raising his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I'm here to help. Is everyone—" "Witch!" The word came from an old woman clutching a crude iron pendant shaped like an eagle. "Psyker, mutant."
"What? No, I'm not." Barry took a step forward. The crowd flinched as one. "Stand fast." The command cracked through the air with military precision. Barry turned to see soldiers emerging from cover positions he hadn't noticed. Good camouflage, he noted with grudging respect. A dozen men in olive drab flak armor, las guns raised and aimed squarely at his chest. Their armor was scratched, patched, functional. Their eyes were hard. The officer, identifiable by the peaked cap and power sword at his hip, advanced with the weapon drawn. "You will identify yourself, witch, or you will be terminated for unsanctioned psychic manifestation." "I'm not a witch or a psychic," Barry said carefully, keeping his hands visible. His mind raced, faster than his body could currently manage. Wrong universe. Definitely wrong universe. These people feared him. They'd rather face those green monsters than whatever they thought he was. "My name is Barry Allen. I was in an accident. I don't know where I am." "You manifested heretical powers," the officer said flatly. "You moved with unnatural speed. You command lightning. These are the marks of the witch, the mutant, the unclean." "I saved those people," Barry protested, gesturing at the civilians who were now being herded away by other soldiers. "Those creatures would have killed them." "You engaged orc raiders without authorization," the officer continued as if Barry hadn't spoken. "You demonstrated abilities outside Imperial sanction. You arrived via an unexplained atmospheric phenomenon that registers as neither warp taint nor Xenos technology." The power sword hummed with barely restrained energy. "You are an anomaly. Anomalies are investigated, contained, or purged. Drop to your knees. Place your hands behind your head. You will be taken for questioning." Barry's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed at him to run. He could be gone in a microsecond, vanished into this strange city before these soldiers could blink. But running meant leaving questions unanswered. It meant not understanding where he was, how to get home, or how to help people who clearly needed help in a world where saving lives got you labeled a threat. "I'll cooperate," he said slowly. "But I need answers. Where am I? What planet is this? What year?" The officer's expression didn't change. "You are on Valentia Secundus, in the Tertius Hive Complex. The year is 427 M41 by Imperial reckoning. You are in the domain of the God Emperor of mankind, and you will submit to his justice or be destroyed in his name." Barry's blood ran cold. M41, the 41st millennium. He'd traveled through time before, but this was beyond anything he'd encountered. And these people spoke of their emperor like a god, enforced obedience with the threat of summary execution, and treated saving lives as a potential heresy. He slowly knelt, lacing his fingers behind his head. Around him, the soldiers tightened their circle, las guns never wavering. In the distance, the civilians he'd saved disappeared into the hive's depths without a backward glance. No gratitude, no relief, just fear of him and the system that ruled them. The officer activated a vox bead at his collar. "Command, this is Lieutenant Koresh. We have contained an unidentified psychic manifestation in Sector Gamma 7, requesting inquisitorial consultation. The subject claims ignorance of his location and demonstrates significant reality-altering capabilities." A burst of static, then a woman's voice, cold and precise. "Acknowledged, Lieutenant. Secure the subject. Inquisitor Viella will arrive within the hour. If the subject attempts escape or demonstrates further powers, you are authorized to execute with extreme prejudice." Understood, Command. Koresh out. Barry felt the weight of dozen aimed weapons and realized with creeping dread that in this universe, being the Flash, being a hero, might be the most dangerous thing he could possibly be. The speed force flickered weakly in his chest, struggling against the oppressive psychic atmosphere of this nightmare future. He'd faced gods, demons, and paradoxes that threatened all of reality. But this was something entirely new, a universe where hope itself was heresy, and the greatest threat might not be the monsters lurking in the dark, but the humans who would learn to become monsters themselves just to survive. If you crave stories of cosmic collisions and impossible heroes thrust into the grim darkness of the far future, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who bear witness to what happens when legends fall into the long war. The lightning in Barry's veins guttered like a dying star as maglocks snapped around his wrists, and he wondered if the Speed Force itself could survive in a universe that had forgotten what it meant to run towards hope instead of away from extinction. The inquisitorial detention cell was a cube of consecrated adamantium, 3 meters on each side, inscribed with words that Barry's altered perception could almost see humming with psychic energy. They pressed against him like invisible walls within walls, making his connection to the Speed Force sputter and fade like a radio losing signal. He sat on the bare metal floor, wrists and ankles bound in maglocks that pulsed with a null field generator, and tried to think his way out of a problem he couldn't outrun. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss. She entered like winter given human form, tall, lean, wrapped in a black greatcoat lined with purity seals and backed by a retinue of 3 armed guards in crimson power armor. Her face was ageless in the way of people who'd seen too much. Sharp features framed by silver hair pulled into a severe bun. Augmetic eyes glowed faintly blue, scanning him with technology Barry couldn't identify. At her hip hung a bolt pistol and a power sword. On her chest, a rosette of gold and obsidian, the symbol of the Inquisition. "I am Inquisitor Viella of the Ordo Hereticus," she said, her voice clipped and precise as a scalpel. "I hunt witches, heretics, and those who would corrupt the Imperium from within. You are an anomaly that defies 17 different categories of threat assessment. Speak truthfully, or I will have your mind flayed and examined by less pleasant means. Who are you, and what power do you serve?" Barry met her augmetic gaze steadily. "My name is Barry Allen. I'm a forensic scientist from Central City, Earth. I was caught in an accident that gave me superhuman speed. I don't serve any power. I use my abilities to help people." "Earth." Viola's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind those mechanical eyes. "Terra. You claim to be from the throne world itself." "I don't know what that means," Barry said honestly. "My Earth has 7 billion people, hundreds of nations, no emperor. I was chasing a criminal through time when something went wrong. The Speed Force, my power source, it tore through dimensions. Next thing I knew, I was falling out of the sky onto your planet." Viella circled him slowly, each step deliberate. "The warp seers examined the residual energy from your arrival. They detected no taint of chaos, no signature of Xenos technology. Yet your power operates outside known psychic disciplines. The warp reacts to your presence, but does not channel through you. Explain." "The Speed Force isn't magic or psychic power," Barry said. struggling to translate concepts he barely understood himself into terms this universe might recognize. It's an energy field that exists outside normal space and time. Where I come from, it connects to the fabric of reality itself. When I run, I tap into it. It lets me move faster than physics should allow, heal rapidly, even phase through solid matter by vibrating my molecules. Heretical, one of the guards muttered. Viola raised her hand, silencing him. Her augmetic eyes whirred, focusing with unnatural intensity. Demonstrate. Move your hand at this superhuman speed you claim. Barry hesitated. The null field suppressed his powers, but not completely, more like trying to run through chest-deep water. He focused, feeling for the speed force connection through the psychic static that permeated this universe. There, faint, flickering, but present. His hand blurred. For perhaps half a second, it became a crimson streak before the null field reasserted itself and the speed force connection snapped back like a rubber band. Pain lanced through his neurons. Barry gasped, slumping forward. Viola's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Your power fights the null field rather than being extinguished by it. That suggests an external source rather than internal mutation. She crouched to his level, studying him with the detachment of a scientist examining a particularly unusual specimen. I have seen thousands of psychers. You are not one. I have encountered Xenos technology that mimics psychic phenomena. You bear none of their signatures, which leaves a third possibility. You are telling the truth, however impossible. I am, Barry said, forcing himself to meet her gaze despite the exhaustion. I don't belong here. I just want to find a way home. But while I'm here, I can help. Those creatures I fought, the green ones with the tusks. Orcs, Viola supplied. Xenos filth that infest half the galaxy. A fungal species that lives only for war. They are one of humanity's oldest enemies, and they will never be reasoned with or reformed. They exist only to kill. Barry's stomach turned. There has to be another way. Containment, isolation, something that doesn't require extermination. Viola's smile was cold. You speak like someone from a gentler age. Perhaps your terror was such a place in some alternate strand of reality. This one is not. Every day the Imperium loses 1,000 worlds to the void, to chaos, to Xenos horrors. Every day we sacrifice millions just to hold the line against extinction. Mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. Hesitation is death. These are not philosophy. They are survival mathematics written in the bones of 10,000 years. That's not true, Barry said, and he couldn't keep the heat from his voice. I've seen the darkest parts of humanity. I fought people who believed the only way forward was through violence and control. They were always wrong. Hope isn't weakness. Compassion isn't suicide. If you've spent 10,000 years fighting and dying, maybe the problem is that you've forgotten there are other ways to win. The guards' weapons came up, targeting systems, painting red dots on Barry's chest. Viola raised her hand again, staying their fire. She studied Barry with renewed interest, head tilted like a bird of prey evaluating wounded game. Idealism, she said softly. I remember that word. There are people in the Imperium who still cling to such concepts, planetary governors who try to rule with kindness, soldiers who mourn their enemies, priests who preach that the Emperor wants more than blood sacrifice. Most of them are dead. The rest have learned to hide their weakness or had it burned away by reality. You will too, if you survive long enough. Maybe, Barry admitted. Or maybe I'll prove you wrong.
Silence stretched between them. Outside the cell,
Somewhere in the hive's depths, a distant rumble suggested artillery fire. The war continued, indifferent to philosophical debates. Finally, Veela tapped the rosette on her chest. "I could declare you a heretic and have you executed within the hour. Or I could declare you a potential asset and weaponize your abilities for the Imperium. The fact that I am considering the latter option tells you everything about how desperate our situation has become." She gestured, and one of the guards produced a data slate, activating a hololithic display. Images flickered to life, surveillance footage of Barry's arrival, his fight with the orcs, rendered in grainy, green-lit picked captures. Veela manipulated the display, isolating frames, analyzing his movements with disturbing precision. "You crossed 300 meters in less than a second. You struck with enough force to kill a full-grown orc with a single blow. You dodged automatic weapons fire at point-blank range." Her augmetic eyes gleamed. "These capabilities exceed even what our finest Astartes can achieve without power armor. If I could replicate this power or control it, the strategic value would be significant." Barry's blood ran cold. "I'm not a weapon, and I won't kill for you." "You already have," Veela said mildly, rewinding the footage. "That orc's whose neck you broke, dead. The one you slammed into the rockcrete, skull fracture, cerebral hemorrhage, died 6 minutes after impact. You wanted to preserve life, but this universe doesn't offer that option. Violence is the only language it speaks." The words hit like physical blows. Barry had felt the neck snap, felt the impact of body against stone, but he'd told himself they were just incapacitated, contained. The orcs were monsters, killing machines. Surely they could survive injuries that would kill humans. Except they hadn't. He'd killed them. Just like he'd killed before, in his own universe, when there was absolutely no other choice. But this felt different, heavier, colder. "I didn't mean to," he said quietly. "Intention is irrelevant. Results matter." Veela deactivated the display. "But your reluctance is noted. It may even be useful. A weapon that hesitates is sometimes more valuable than one that simply destroys. Control requires restraint." She leaned forward, and Barry saw something flicker in her expression. Not sympathy exactly, but a kind of grim recognition. "I will make you an offer, Barry Allen. Work with me. Apply your abilities where I direct them. Help me combat a specific threat that has emerged in this sector. In exchange, I will not execute you. I will provide resources to help stabilize your connection to this speed force, and I will task my savants with researching dimensional mechanics that might, emphasis on might, lead to your return home. And if I refuse, then you die here, in this cell, and your corpse will be dissected by Mechanicus priests who will spend decades trying to understand your physiology. Any discoveries will be used to create weapons in the God Emperor's name. Your death will serve the Imperium regardless. The only question is whether your life will." Barry closed his eyes, reaching for the speed force. It flickered weakly, like a heartbeat in an iron lung. He thought of his friends, his Earth, the world he'd left behind. He thought of Iris, who would be looking for him, wondering where he'd gone. He thought of the promise he'd made to always run toward people in need, not away. "What threat?" he asked. Veela's smile returned, sharp as a knife. 3 days ago, a chaos cult erupted in the Underhive.
Not unusual. We burn out a dozen such infections every month. But this one is different. They've summoned something, or someone has given them weapons beyond their station. They move with unnatural speed, striking imperial positions and vanishing before we can respond. Conventional forces are useless for cultists, but keep arriving too late to engage. We need someone who can match their velocity, who can strike faster than they can retreat. She pulled up new footage, blurred figures and corrupted armor, moving almost too fast for the picked captures to register, leaving massacred guard positions in their wake. Red lightning crackled around them, similar to, but fundamentally different from Barry's Speed Force energy. Wrong, twisted. The energy felt diseased, even through the recording. "Chaos," she said, and the word carried weight like a curse. It is entropy given will, madness given form. It corrupts, it destroys, and it offers power to those foolish enough to accept its bargain. These cultists have found some way to accelerate themselves, to mock the blessing your Speed Force represents by wrapping it in warp taint. They must be stopped utterly and permanently. Barry stared at the footage, watching figures that moved almost like him, but wrongly, with jerky, spasmodic motions that suggested power without control, speed without grace. And in their wake, bodies, dozens of them, men and women in imperial uniforms, torn apart by blades and claws, moving faster than human reflexes could counter. He said slowly, "If I do this, I do it my way. I won't execute prisoners. I won't kill anyone who surrenders. And if there's a way to save these people, to undo whatever's been done to them—" "There isn't," Vela said flatly. "Chaos corruption is absolute. Once the warp touches a soul, that soul is lost. Mercy to the corrupted is damnation for the innocent they'll murder tomorrow. This is non-negotiable." Barry wanted to argue, wanted to believe she was wrong, but the footage kept playing, kept showing massacres performed by things that had once been human and now were something else entirely. He thought about what he'd do if these were Reverse Flash's victims, or Zooms, or any of the speedsters who'd taken his gift and weaponized it into nightmare. "I'll stop them," he said finally, "but I won't become like them. I won't become like you. And when this is done, you'll help me find a way home." "Agreed." Vela gestured, and the maglocks released with a hiss. Barry's hands were free. The null field generators powered down, and suddenly the Speed Force flooded back into his system, still attenuated by the ambient warp presence, still weaker than normal, but there, present, alive. He stood, rolling his shoulders, feeling lightning dance beneath his skin. Vela watched him with the expression of someone who'd just acquired a particularly dangerous tool and wasn't entirely sure it wouldn't cut her hand off. "My guards will escort you to the armory. You'll need equipment, Vox speed for communication, Auspex scanner to track warp signatures, melter charges for confirmed kills. You'll deploy in 6 hours. Familiarize yourself with the technology, learn the terrain, and understand this, Barry Allen. The moment you become a liability, the moment I suspect chaos has touched your soul, I will kill you myself. Mercy is heresy. Compassion is weakness. Remember that, or this universe will teach you the lesson far more painfully than I ever could." She turned and left, greatcoat swirling behind her, her retinue following in perfect formation. The door hissed shut, leaving Barry alone in the cell with his thoughts and the growing certainty that he'd just agreed to something that would fundamentally change him.
In 6 hours, he'd face enemies who wore his gift like a grotesque parody. In 6 hours, he'd learn what it meant to be the fastest man alive in a universe where speed was just another way to kill. The speed force hummed in his chest, stronger now without the null field suppression, but still struggling against the oppressive psychic weight of the 41st millennium. Barry closed his eyes and reached for the thing that had always defined him, not speed, but hope, the belief that every person deserved a chance, that every life mattered. In the grim darkness of the far future, that belief felt like the most heretical thing he could possibly.
The Underhive was a cathedral to human misery. Barry descended through levels of hive Tertius that grew progressively darker, more toxic, more desperate with each 100-meter drop. Flickering luminators cast everything in sickly green light. The air tasted of promethium fumes, human waste, and something Barry's enhanced senses identified as pure desperation made manifest. Millions lived down here in the dark, too poor, too broken, or too forgotten to ever see the sky. The vox bead in his ear crackled. Target zone is 2 kilometers northeast, Vela's voice came through, distorted by interference. Auspex is picking up warp fluctuations consistent with repeated chaos manifestations. The cult has claimed 6 city blocks, 47 confirmed dead in the last 12 hours. Rules of engagement: purge all hostiles, minimize collateral damage to infrastructure. Survivors are to be... "I'm not killing civilians caught in the crossfire," Barry interrupted, moving through the Underhive's labyrinthine passages at a speed that would have been invisible to normal humans. The speed force still felt muffled, like running underwater, but it was enough. "And I'm going to try talking to these people before. You will find that the corrupted do not wish to talk." Vela's tone suggested she'd had this argument 1,000 times before and expected to have it 1,000 times more. "But proceed, learn. The universe is an excellent teacher for those who survive the lessons." Barry killed the Vox and focused on movement. The Underhive's geography was insane. Streets that twisted back on themselves, buildings cantilevered over bottomless shafts, entire districts suspended on chains the width of trees. He navigated by instinct and the faint warp taint that the Inquisition's Auspex scanner registered as pulsing red dots on his display. He found the first body 3 minutes later. She'd been young, maybe 20, wearing the gray coveralls of a manufactorum worker. Her body was twisted in a way that suggested she'd been running when something impossibly fast had overtaken her. The wounds were precise, almost surgical in their lethality, and burned into the rockcrete beside her corpse in letters that seemed to writhe when Barry looked at them directly, were words in a language he didn't know but somehow understood. "The Prince of Pleasure grants velocity eternal." Barry's stomach churned. He'd seen crime scenes before, hundreds of them in his forensic work, but this felt different. The air around the corpse was wrong, charged with an energy that made his speed force connection recoil instinctively. Whatever had killed this woman had been fast, but it was a mockery of speed, corrupt, twisted into something that existed only to inflict pain. "Contact," the Vox crackled. "Imperial Guard checkpoint 300 meters from your position is under assault. Multiple hostile speedsters confirmed, casualties mounting." Barry didn't respond, he just ran. The speed force surged despite the warp's interference, propelling him through the Underhive at velocities that turned the world into a blur of gray and rust red. He covered 300 meters in under 2 seconds, emerging into a fortified checkpoint where a dozen Imperial Guardsmen were dying. They moved like lightning. 4 figures in armor that had once been Imperial, but was now corrupted beyond recognition. Purple and pink corruption spread across the ceramite like living fungus. Their movements were impossibly fast, but wrong, jerky, spasmodic. They giggled as they killed, high-pitched sounds that set Barry's teeth on edge. One cultist, moving at speeds that would have made him a blur to normal vision, drove a corrupted power sword through a guardsman's chest. The soldier screamed, not in pain, but in ecstasy, his face twisting into a rictus of pleasure even as blood fountained from the wound. The cultist leaned in close, whispering something that made the dying man's scream turn into laughter before his body went limp. Barry saw red. He crossed the distance in a microsecond, speed force lightning crackling around his fists. His punch caught the cultist in the side, hard enough to shatter ribs and send the figure tumbling across the checkpoint. The cultist's laughter never stopped, even as he slammed into a rockcrete pillar. "Get to cover!" Barry shouted at the surviving guardsmen. They stared at him with the same fear and confusion he'd seen before, but discipline overrode terror. They fell back, dragging wounded comrades. The other three cultists turned to face him as one. Behind their corrupted helmets, Barry could feel eyes studying him with predatory interest. One spoke, voice distorted by Vox corruption and something worse. "Another one who runs fast? The prince will be so pleased. We can play forever and ever and ever." They moved. Fast. Not as fast as Barry, even at his diminished capacity, but fast enough to be dangerous. They spread out in a pattern that suggested tactical training corrupted into something alien. Barry dodged left, feeling a blade whisper past his ear. Countered right, his fist connecting with a helmet hard enough to crack the ceramite. Spun, using the speed force to vibrate his molecules, phasing through a thirst that should have impaled him. But they were learning, adapting. Each exchange taught them his rhythm, his style. And they didn't tire, didn't slow. Whatever chaos had given them, it wasn't bound by human stamina or pain. Barry created a vortex, spinning at speeds that should have torn the cultists off their feet. One stumbled, but the others leaned into it, using his own displaced air to accelerate themselves further. They moved through the vortex like fish swimming upstream, blades reaching for him with gleeful persistence. "You run from salvation?" one shrieked. "The prince offers perfection, perfect speed, perfect sensation, no limits, no exhaustion, only velocity and ecstasy eternal." "Hard pass," Barry snapped, vibrating his hand to subsonic frequencies and driving it through the cultist's armor. Not to kill, he couldn't bring himself to do that, but to disable. His hand pierced the corrupted ceramite and found circuitry beneath. He sent a pulse of speed force energy through it, shorting out whatever kept the armor functioning. The cultist dropped, twitching, but not dead. He could see the figure's chest rising and falling, could hear continued laughter, even as the armor sparked and smoked. The other two paused, tilted their heads in unison, like puppets on the same string. "Interesting," they said together, their voices overlapping in perfect synchronicity. "You fight without killing. How deliciously naive, how beautifully doomed."
They blurred into motion again, but this time Barry was ready. He'd been holding back, trying to incapacitate without permanent harm, but these things weren't going to stop. They'd chase him forever, kill anyone in their path, and laugh while doing it. So he changed tactics. Instead of attacking them, he attacked the environment. Supersonic punches to support pillars, creating controlled collapses that forced the cultists to dodge instead of press their assault. Vibrating through walls to create unexpected angles of attack. Using the speed force to generate localized electromagnetic pulses that interfered with their corrupted armor systems. It worked. Barely. The cultists' movements became erratic as their armor glitched, systems conflicting with the twisted biomechanical augmentations fused to their flesh. One stumbled, and Barry was there, delivering a precisely calculated strike to the base of the skull, enough force to induce unconsciousness without killing. The cultist went down. Two left. They didn't retreat. Instead, they began to change. The corruption spread faster, armor flowing like liquid, limbs elongating into something that wasn't quite human anymore. Their speed increased, but at a cost. Barry could see the flesh beneath the armor blackening, burning away as whatever power they'd been granted consumed them from within. "You see?" one hissed, voice degrading into something between human speech and insect chittering. "This is the gift, to burn bright, to experience everything. Speed is just the beginning. The prince offers so much more." "What you call a gift looks a lot like suicide," Barry shot back, circling them. His Speed Force connection flickered. The ambient corruption was so thick here, he could barely maintain his velocity. Every second in proximity to these things made him feel sick, like the fundamental wrongness of their existence was trying to infect his own connection to speed. "Death is transformation," they chorused. "Stagnation is the only sin. Come, run with us. Feel what we feel. The prince." Bolt rounds exploded through both cultists simultaneously. Barry spun to see Viella emerging from the shadows, flanked by her crimson armored guards. Her bolt pistol smoked, barrel still raised. The cultists, what was left of them, twitched on the ground, bodies torn nearly in half by the explosive ammunition. They were still laughing. Even dying, even destroyed, they laughed with ecstatic pleasure. No hesitation, no mercy. This is how you fight chaos, Barry Allen. Complete eradication or they rise again. Barry stared at the dying cultists, watching the light fade from eyes that had been human once. They were people before this. They had lives, families, and they traded all of it for power, Viella interrupted. They made their choice. They chose damnation. Your compassion is wasted on those who have already fallen. I disabled 3 of them without killing, Barry said, gesturing to the unconscious cultists. I proved it's possible to stop them without... Sergeant, Viella said, not looking away from Barry. Burn the corrupted, all of them. One of her guards stepped forward, producing a flamer. Barry moved to intercept, but Viella's bolt pistol came up, aimed squarely at his head. Do not interfere. This is necessary. They're unconscious, helpless. You can study them, try to reverse the corruption, find out how to prevent. There is no reversal, Viella said, and for the first time, Barry heard something other than cold calculation in her voice. Exhaustion. Grief. I know you want there to be. Every idealist who joins the Inquisition believes they'll find the cure, the solution, the way to save the damned. But chaos corruption is absolute. These people are already dead. Their bodies just haven't stopped moving yet. Prolonging their existence is cruelty, not mercy. The flamer roared. The cultists burned. Barry forced himself to watch, to not look away, even as every instinct screamed at him to run, to stop this, to find another way. When it was done, Viella holstered her weapon. You fought well. Your speed advantage is significant, and you adapted to their tactics quickly, but you pulled your punches. In chaos engagements, that hesitation will get you killed, will get others killed. If I stop pulling my punches, I become like them. I become someone who kills without question, who sees people as problems to be eliminated. Where I come from, we called that villainy. Where you come from is gone, Viella said, not unkindly. You are here now, in the 41st millennium, and here the only difference between hero and villain is which corpses you're standing on when the smoke clears. She turned, gesturing for her guards to follow. The cult has a stronghold deeper in the Underhive. 6 more confirmed speedster corrupted, plus perhaps 100 standard cultists. And at the center, something worse. The Auspex registers it as a minor warp entity,
likely the source of their power. We move on it in 3 hours. Rest, pray, prepare yourself for what comes next." She paused at the checkpoint's edge. "Or don't. Run. Use that speed of yours to escape, to vanish into the hide, and hope I never find you. But know that if you do, those cultists will continue killing. Dozens per day, hundreds per week, and every death will be on your conscience, hero." Then she was gone, leaving Barry alone with the bodies and the acrid stench of burned corruption. He stood there for a long moment, feeling the speed force pulse weakly in his chest, fighting against the pervasive wrongness that saturated this universe. He thought about running, about finding some way off this planet, away from this nightmare. He'd faced evil before, gods and demons and paradoxes that threatened reality itself, but this was different. This was systemic, institutional, an entire civilization built on the logic that mercy was weakness and hope was heresy. The surviving guardsmen were watching him from their cover positions, waiting to see what he'd do. Barry knelt beside one of the burned cultists. Beneath the corruption, beneath the twisted armor and blackened flesh, he could see what they'd been. Young, maybe younger than him. Someone's child. Someone who'd made a terrible choice or been forced into one. And now there was nothing left but ash. "I'm sorry," he whispered. To them, to himself, to the version of Barry Allen that believed that every person could be saved. The speed force flickered, responding to his emotion. For just a moment, the connection strengthened, pushing back the warp's oppressive presence. Barry felt it clearly. His power wasn't weakening because this universe rejected it. It was weakening because he was losing faith in what it represented. Speed without purpose, power without hope, just another weapon in an endless war. He stood, meeting the guardsmen's eyes. They flinched, but didn't look away. "Get your wounded to Medicae, and tell your commander that the Flash is going to end this cult, all of it, but I'm doing it my way." He didn't wait for a response. He just ran deeper into the underhive, toward the corruption that pulsed like a diseased heartbeat in his enhanced senses, toward the stronghold where something worse waited, toward choices he wasn't sure he was ready to make. The speed force carried him through the darkness, and Barry Allen wondered if the light he'd always believed in could survive in a universe that had spent 10,000 years trying to extinguish it. The cult's stronghold was a cathedral of excess built in the corpse of an abandoned manufactorum. Barry approached it alone, moving through the underhive's arterial passages at a pace that kept him just ahead of Vaela's kill teams. He'd disabled his Vox bead 2 kilometers back, not because he was going rogue, but because he needed to think without the Inquisitor's cold pragmatism whispering in his ear. The Auspex scanner painted the stronghold in pulsing crimson, 6 speedster signatures moving in patterns too coordinated to be random, 100+ standard cultists, and at the center, something that made the device scream with warp interference, a presence so fundamentally wrong that even the Imperium's sanctified technology recoiled from registering it properly. Barry crouched on a gantry overlooking the main chamber, his enhanced perception taking in every detail. The cultists had transformed the manufactorum floor into something obscene, altars constructed from melted weapons, draped in silks that seemed to writhe independent of air currents. Captives, dozens of them, chained to pillars, their screams mixing with laughter in a way that made Barry's stomach turn. The speedster cultists circled the perimeter in an endless loop, their movements creating a barrier of velocity and corruption. And in the center, hovering above an altar constructed from what looked like fused human skeletons, was the entity. It defied easy description. Humanoid in the loosest sense. Too many limbs, too many eyes, proportions that shifted when Barry looked at it directly. Purple and pink energy crackled around its form, and its voice, when it spoke,
bypassed his ears entirely and pressed directly into his mind. "Another fast one comes to play," it purred, the mental voice dripping with amusement. "But this one tastes different, not corrupted, not tainted, pure speed, pure purpose. How deliciously rare." Barry fought the urge to run. Every instinct screamed that he was in the presence of something that could break him, not physically, but fundamentally. The speed force recoiled in his chest, flickering like a candle in a hurricane. "Let the captives go," Barry called out, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Whatever you are, whatever you want, it doesn't have to involve them." The entity laughed, a sound like breaking glass mixed with dying screams. "But they volunteered. Every single one begged for transformation, for the gift of sensation beyond mortal limits. I am Nakari's herald, a prince of pleasure's chosen servant. I offer ecstasy eternal, experience without bound. And they accepted." "Lies," Barry said, but doubt crept in. Some of the cultists below were laughing too, moving through rituals with expressions of genuine rapture. Had they chosen this? Could corruption be consensual? "Come down, fast one. Let me show you what I showed them. The speed force you wield is magnificent, yes, but imagine it perfected. No limits, no exhaustion. Speed married to sensation, velocity married to pleasure. You could run forever, feel everything, transcend the pathetic constraints of linear existence." The offer pulled at something in Barry's mind. He'd always pushed himself harder, faster, trying to reach limits that seemed perpetually out of grasp. What if there were no limits? What if he could access the speed force without restriction, without the pain and sacrifice that came with every desperate sprint through time? No. He shook his head, forcing clarity. He'd seen this before. Villains offering power, promising shortcuts to greatness. Zoom had made similar offers. So had Thawne. Every time, the price was surrendering what made him human. "I'm good with limits. Limits are what separate heroes from monsters." How pedestrian. How boring. The entity's form rippled with irritation. "Very well. If you will not join willingly, my children will teach you. They were once like you, self-righteous, constrained by morality. Now they are free. Watch as they demonstrate." The speedster cultists broke from their patrol pattern and converged on Barry's position simultaneously. He moved, speed force lightning crackling as he dropped from the gantry and hit the ground running. The cultists matched him, their corrupted speed keeping pace in a way that the earlier ones hadn't. They'd been practicing, learning, adapting. Barry wove through the cathedral's interior, using obstacles and terrain to break line of sight, but the cultists anticipated his movements with unnatural precision. They weren't just fast, they were synchronized, operating like a hive mind directed by the entity's will. One caught him with a glancing blow that opened a gash across his shoulder. Barry felt the wound burning with unnatural heat, the corruption trying to seep into his bloodstream. His accelerated healing fought it, speed force energy cauterizing the infection before it could spread, but the pain was excruciating. "You can't win," one cultist hissed, driving him toward a corner. "There are 6 of us, 1 of you. Simple mathematics." "I'm really good at math," Barry shot back, and vibrated through the floor. He emerged 3 levels down, buying himself seconds to think. The cultists would find him quickly. They could sense his speed force signature the way he could sense their corruption. He needed a plan that didn't involve killing them, but every non-lethal option he'd tried earlier had failed or been negated by Vayla's purge protocols. The Vox bead crackled, despite being disabled. Vayla's voice cutting through distance and interference. "Barry, I know you can hear me. My kill teams are in position. We're breaching in 90 seconds. If you're still inside when we deploy incendiary protocols, you'll burn with the cultists." 90 seconds. Not enough time to evacuate the captives. Not enough time to find an alternative solution. Viella was going to burn the entire stronghold, killing everyone inside, guilty and innocent, alike, and call it victory. Barry's jaw tightened. Not on his watch. He ran back up to the main chamber, emerging at speeds that made him a crimson blur. The cultists converged again, but Barry wasn't fighting them this time. He was heading for the captives. If he could free them, get them clear before the purge. "Oh, how noble," the entity crooned. "The hero saves the innocent. Except they aren't innocent, fast one. Look closer." Barry reached the first captive, a middle-aged man chained to a pillar. The man's eyes were wrong, purple, swirling with the same corruption that infected the cultists. He wasn't screaming in terror, he was laughing in ecstasy. "No," Barry whispered. He moved to the next captive. Same eyes, same laughter, all of them. Every single person he'd thought needed saving had already accepted the entity's gift. They were waiting to be fully transformed, to join the speedster cultists in their eternal sprint toward damnation. "You see, there are no innocents here, only those who have glimpsed perfection and those who still cling to mundane limitation. You are the latter, but you could be so much more." 60 seconds, Veila's voice.
Barry stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by willing cultists, facing an entity that offered power without cost, watching his chance to be heroic evaporate like morning dew. Every option led to death, his own, theirs, everyone's. This was the impossible choice Viella had warned him about, the one where being the Flash meant nothing because there was no right answer. The speedster cultists circled him, weapons raised. The entity pulsed with anticipation. The captives laughed their terrible laughter. Barry closed his eyes and reached for the speed force. Deep, deeper than he'd ever gone in this corrupted universe. Past the warp's interference, past the psychic static, into the pure connection that defined who he was. The energy answered, flooding through him, despite the dimensional barriers, despite everything trying to suppress it. His eyes snapped open, crackling with crimson lightning. "You want to see what the Speed Force can really do?" he said quietly. "Fine, let me show you." He moved. Not to fight, not to flee, but to do what the Flash did best, change the equation. Barry became a tornado of velocity, circling the chamber at speeds that approached relativistic. The displaced air created a vortex that lifted cultists off their feet. He phased through pillars, vibrating them at frequencies that disrupted the warp energy binding them. Chains shattered, altars collapsed. The carefully constructed ritual space began to tear itself apart under the purely physical force of his speed. The speedster cultists tried to intercept him, but they were operating in his domain now. Barry shifted tactics every microsecond, supersonic punches to armor joints, electromagnetic pulses to disrupt corrupted systems, precision strikes that incapacitated without killing. They were fast, but he was faster, and more importantly, he was thinking 3 moves ahead. "Stop!" the entity shrieked. "You're disrupting the ritual! The convergence is over!" Barry finished and drove his fist into the altar's base. Speed force energy exploded outward, pure kinetic force, untainted by chaos. The altar shattered, the entity howled, its form destabilizing as the ritual anchoring it to reality collapsed. For just a moment, Barry saw what it truly was. Not a god or demon, but a fragment of something larger, sustained only by the faith and corruption of its followers. 30 seconds, Veila's voice. Barry grabbed the nearest cultist, one of the speedsters, now disabled and twitching as his armor sparked. "Tell me how to save them," Barry demanded. "Tell me there's a way to reverse this." The cultist's laughter had turned to sobs. "There isn't. The prince's gift is forever. We chose this. We wanted this. And now we're damned. And it felt so good." Barry heard the truth in those words. Dale had been right. There was no cure, no reversal. Just people who'd traded their humanity for power and were now trapped in bodies that consumed themselves in pursuit of sensation. 10 seconds. The entity was dissipating, its form breaking apart into purple mist, but before it vanished completely, it pressed one final thought into Barry's mind. You won today, Fast One, but this universe will teach you what I could not. Every victory will cost you something precious. Every life you save will demand another in payment. This is the long war, and everyone loses eventually. Then it was gone. Barry ran. He grabbed as many cultists as he could carry, unconscious, disabled, those too corrupted to fight back, and blurred toward the stronghold's exits. He knew what Vayela would say, that he was wasting time on the damned, that every second spent trying to save the unsavable was a second stolen from the truly innocent elsewhere. But if he abandoned them, if he let them burn without trying, then the 41st millennium had already won, had already turned him into another weapon in an endless war. He emerged from the stronghold, carrying 4 cultists, their bodies corrupted but still breathing. Behind him, the stronghold erupted in flames as Vayela's kill teams deployed their incendiary protocols. Promethium fire washed through the cathedral, consuming everything: rituals, altars, the captives who'd laughed as they waited for transformation. Barry set the cultists down and collapsed, exhausted beyond measure. His Speed Force connection guttered like a dying flame. He'd pushed too hard, used too much power in the universe that resisted his every effort. Vayela approached, her expression unreadable. She looked at the 4 cultists Barry had saved, then at the burning stronghold, then at Barry himself. You cost us valuable intelligence, and you risked your life for 4 corrupted souls who will need to be executed anyway. Maybe, Barry said, too tired to argue. But I tried. That has to count for something. Vayela was silent for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She knelt beside him, her augmetic eyes whirring as they focused on his face. In the Imperium, trying is not enough. Results matter. Efficiency matters. Victory at any cost is the only acceptable outcome. She paused. But I have served the God Emperor for 60 years. I have burned worlds, executed billions, and made every hard choice survival demanded. And in all that time, I have never once stopped to mourn what was lost. Perhaps that makes me effective. Or perhaps that makes me a different kind of monster. She stood, gesturing to her guards. The cultists you saved will be interrogated, then granted the Emperor's mercy, a quick death, cleaner than they deserve. The stronghold is destroyed. The minor warp entity is banished. By any objective measure, this was a successful operation. Doesn't feel like success, Barry said. It never does, not in this millennium. But you fought well. You adapted. You learned. And most importantly, you made me question protocols I haven't questioned in decades. That is unusual. She extended a hand. Barry took it, letting her help him to his feet. Rest. Recover your connection to this Speed Force of yours. Because in 3 days, we deploy to Kronwald Hive. There's a chaos incursion there that makes this cult look like a minor infection. And I need to know. When the choice comes, when mercy conflicts with survival, which side will the Flash choose? I'll let you know when I figure it out, Barry said quietly. Vayela nodded, as if that answer satisfied something she'd been testing. The Emperor protects, but he expects us to protect ourselves first. Remember that at Kronwald. Your idealism won't save you there. She walked away, leaving Barry alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that the 41st millennium wasn't just testing his powers, it was testing his soul.
Kronwald Hive was dying when Barry arrived, and the Imperium had already written its eulogy. 3 days after the Underhive purge, Barry stood in the Strategium aboard the orbital station Righteous Indignation, watching hololithic displays paint a picture of apocalyptic certainty. Kronwald, population 47 million, strategic industrial output rated Gamma critical, had been compromised by a chaos incursion that made the Underhive cult look like children playing with matches. A full warband of Chaos Space Marines, the Emperor's Children Legion, had torn through the Hive's upper spires and were spreading corruption faster than Imperial forces could contain. "The decision has been made," Lord General Kastner announced, his scarred face illuminated by flickering pict feeds of massacre. "Exterminatus protocols will be authorized within 6 hours. Cyclonic torpedoes will reduce Kronwald to molten slag. 47 million lives traded to prevent billions more from falling to chaos. The mathematics are simple." Barry's hands clenched. 6 hours, 47 million people. The words were too big, too abstract to properly comprehend. In his universe, Earth's total population was 7 billion. This single decision would erase nearly 1% of his entire world's population, and these Imperial commanders disgusted with the emotional weight of a logistical footnote. "There has to be another way," Barry said, his voice cutting through the strategic briefing. "Evacuation, quarantine protocols, something that doesn't involve mass murder," Viella finished, her tone neutral. She stood beside him, studying the same data with clinical detachment. "That's what you're thinking, that we're about to commit genocide on a scale that would horrify any civilized society." "Yes," Barry said flatly. "You're correct." Viella zoomed in on one sector of the Hive where corruption had spread like cancer through residential districts. Purple and pink tendrils of warp energy visible even from orbit, transforming architecture and flesh alike into monuments to excess. But consider the alternative. If Kronwald falls completely to the Emperor's children, it becomes a staging ground, a fortress. From there, chaos forces can spread to neighboring systems, corrupting worlds by the dozen, by the hundred. The Imperium has witnessed this pattern for 10,000 years. We learned the hard way that mercy to one world can doom a sector. So you kill 47 million people to save theoretical billions. That's not justice. That's not even pragmatism. It's giving up. Lord General Kastner's gaze hardened. "You are here by inquisitorial sufferance, Xenos Anomaly. Your opinion on Imperial strategic doctrine is neither requested nor valued. The Exterminatus order has been issued and will be executed on schedule." "Unless someone can stop the incursion before the deadline," Viella interjected smoothly. She turned to Barry, augmetic eyes unreadable. "The Emperor's children are led by a champion named Zaxion the Rapturous. He commands from the Hive's central spire, surrounded by his warband. Kill him, shatter their command structure, and the incursion fragments. Without coordination, remaining chaos forces can be contained and purged conventionally. Kronwald lives. 47 million souls continue their service to the Emperor." "One man," Barry said slowly. "You want me to kill one Chaos Space Marine, and in exchange, you'll call off the Exterminatus." "One monster," Viella corrected. "Zaxion is no longer human in any meaningful sense. He has slaughtered his way across a dozen worlds, corrupting and destroying everything he touches. He is damnation given form. And yes, remove him, and I will personally convince Lord General Kastner to delay the order while conventional forces mop up the remaining corruption." Barry studied the hololithic display, his enhanced perception analyzing tactical data that flowed past faster than normal humans could process. Zaxion's position was deep in the Hive, surrounded by corrupted space marines who each represented centuries of combat experience wrapped in armor that could shrug off weapons fire like parchment. It was a suicide mission, disguised as an impossible task.
How fast are Chaos Space Marines? Barry asked. Enhanced beyond human limits, faster than you are currently, with your Speed Force connection suppressed by warp presence. Stronger, more durable, armed with weapons that can tear through armor like parchment. And the Chaos Space Marines are faster still. They worship sensation, pursue perfection of experience, speed, pain, pleasure, all pushed to extremes. So I'll be outmatched, outgunned, and fighting in hostile territory where my powers are compromised. Barry's lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. Sounds like a Tuesday back home. You're accepting. Kastner's surprise was evident. I'm going to try, because trying to save 47 million people is better than not trying at all. Even if I fail, even if the exterminatus happens anyway, at least I'll know I didn't just stand here and watch while you murdered a planet. Viola's expression shifted, something that might have been respect flickering behind the augmetic coldness. You'll have air support until you enter the spire. After that, you're alone. Zaxion will sense you coming. The chaos corrupted can feel uncorrupted souls like blood in water. You'll have no backup, no extraction, and if you fall to corruption— She drew her bolt pistol, checking the chamber with practiced efficiency. I will personally ensure your death is swift and clean. That is the kindness I can offer. Then I better not fall, Barry said. The drop pod screamed through Kronwald's atmosphere like a falling star. Barry rode it down alone, maglocked to the interior, feeling every violent shake and lurch as re-entry fire washed over the armored shell. Through the viewport, he watched the hive grow from abstract geography to concrete nightmare, a mountain of human construction riddled with corruption like rot through wood. The pod slammed into a landing platform 3 kilometers from the central spire. Barry emerged at speed, immediately assessing his environment. The hive's upper levels were a war zone, buildings scarred by bolter fire, streets littered with bodies that had twisted into shapes bodies shouldn't hold, and everywhere the corruption, purple and pink energy that seemed to breathe, pulsing with malevolent intelligence. He ran. The Speed Force connection was weaker here than anywhere he'd been. The concentrated chaos presence pressed against his power like physical weight. Barry pushed through it, forcing velocity from a source that screamed in protest. The world blurred around him, but sluggishly, like running through molasses. Cultists tried to intercept him. Barry phased through them, not wasting time on minor threats. Corrupted PDF troopers opened fire with weapons that spat rounds that laughed as they flew. Barry dodged, weaved, kept moving forward, always forward. The first Chaos Space Marine appeared 2 kilometers from the spire. It was massive, 8 feet of corrupted ceramite, armor painted in obscene purples and pinks, decorated with screaming faces that might have been decoration or might have been real. It moved with speed that should have been impossible for something so large, power sword crackling with warp energy.
"Fresh meat for the prince," it bellowed, voice distorted by Vox corruption. "Come, little mortal, let me show you sensations beyond." Barry hit it at relativistic velocity. The impact generated a shockwave that shattered windows for 3 blocks. The Chaos Marine flew backward, crashing through a rockcrete wall. Barry didn't stop to see if it stayed down. He just kept running, pushing his Speed Force connection to limits that made his neurons scream. More Space Marines emerged. They were coordinating, cutting off escape routes, herding him toward kill zones. Barry adapted, vertical running up building faces, phasing through obstacles, using the environment's 3-dimensional geography to avoid engagement. Every second fighting was a second wasted, and he had exactly 297 minutes left before the exterminatus countdown completed. The central spire loomed ahead, a twisted monument that had once been the hive's administrative hub. Now it pulsed with corruption so thick Barry could see it warping reality. Physics bent around it, colors that shouldn't exist bleeding through cracks in space-time. He entered at ground level, blurring past corrupted guards who couldn't track his movement. The interior was a labyrinth of transformed architecture, walls that breathed, floors that rived, impossible geometry that made his head ache. Barry navigated by instinct and the auspex scanner Viella had given him, following the densest concentration of warp signature toward the spire's apex. Zaxian was waiting. The throne room, if it could still be called that, was a cathedral to excess. Every surface was covered with carvings that depicted acts Barry refused to fully process. At the center, seated on a throne constructed from fused bones and screaming metal, was the champion himself. Zaxian the Rapturous was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. His armor was a work of art, every plate inscribed with runes that hurt to look at. His face was uncovered, porcelain perfect, with eyes that held the weight of centuries and madness in equal proportion. When he smiled, Barry felt his Speed Force connection falter. "The fast one," he purred, his voice like silk over razors. "Come, little mortal, let me show you sensations beyond." "I'm here to stop you," Barry said, lightning crackling around his fists. "Stand down or what?" Zaxian rose, and the movement was liquid grace given form. "You'll strike me? Fight me? Oh, please do. It's been so long since I faced someone truly interesting. The mortals here die so quickly, their sensations so brief. But you might last minutes, maybe even hours." He drew his weapons, twin power swords that sang with demon essence. "Come, flash of the distant cosmos, show me what your Speed Force can accomplish against 10,000 years of perfected warfare." Barry moved. Zaxian matched him. The throne room became a blur of crimson lightning and purple corruption, two impossibly fast combatants moving through space-time at velocities that made them invisible to normal perception. Barry struck. Zaxian parried, riposted, forced him to dodge. They circled, clashed, separated, and engaged again in microsecond intervals. But Barry was losing ground. Every exchange drained his Speed Force connection further. The ambient corruption was overwhelming here, pressing against his power like a vice. And Zaxian wasn't just fast, he was experienced, trained, perfected through millennia of combat that made Barry's 2 decades of heroism look like amateur hour. A power sword caught Barry's side, carving through his suit and flesh beneath. Pain exploded, not just physical but spiritual, like the wound was trying to infect his soul. Barry screamed, stumbling, and Zaxian's boot caught him in the chest hard enough to shatter ribs. Barry flew backward, crashed into a pillar, tasted blood. The world swam. His Speed Force connection flickered, dying. Zaxian approached slowly, savoring the moment. "You fought well, better than most, but in the end, you're just another mortal playing at godhood. The Speed Force you wield is magnificent, yes, but it pales before the gifts of the Prince. Accept his blessing. Join us. Together we could experience velocity eternal, sensation without limit." Barry spat blood. "Hard pass." "Pity." Zaxian raised his blade for the killing stroke. "I would have enjoyed corrupting you slowly, but a quick death has its own poetry." The throne room ceiling exploded. Drop pods crashed through from above, crimson and gold ceramite, marked with the iconography of a chapter Barry didn't recognize. Space Marines, but not chaos corrupted. Imperial, loyalist. They emerged from the pods with bolters blazing, their war cries shaking the corrupted architecture. "For the Emperor and Sanguinius," their leader bellowed, a massive warrior in artificer armor. "Blood Angels, purge the heretic!" Zaxian snarled, turning to face this new threat. It gave Barry the opening he needed. He reached deep into the Speed Force, past the pain, past the corruption, past everything that said this was impossible. The energy answered one final time, flooding through him with desperate intensity. Not as much as he needed, not as much as he wanted, but enough. Barry became lightning. He crossed the distance in a nanosecond, vibrating his hand to phasing frequencies, and drove it into Zaxian's chest, not through armor, through the space between atoms,
phasing past ceramite and corrupted flesh to reach the thing that kept Zaxion alive. He felt it, a nexus of warp energy, twisted and wrong, the source of Zaxion's power. And he ripped it out.
Zaxion screamed, a sound that transcended human hearing, that made reality itself shudder. His perfect face cracked, corruption bleeding away like water from a punctured skin. The champion of the Emperor's children collapsed, reduced from terrifying warrior to dying remnant in a single instant. Barry staggered back, clutching the warp nexus, a pulsing mass of purple energy that burned his hand even through the Speed Force's protection. He threw it across the room, and one of the Blood Angels incinerated it with a burst of heavy flamer fire. Silence fell. Zaxion twitched once, twice, then lay still. The Blood Angel's leader approached Barry, removing his helmet to reveal a scarred face marked with nobility and barely restrained bloodlust. "You fought well, Anomaly. Inquisitor Viella informed us of your presence. We were ordered to provide support if you survived to reach Zaxion." "Thanks for the assist," Barry said, every word an effort. His Speed Force connection was almost gone, guttering like a candle flame in a hurricane. Is it done, the incursion? Without Zaxion, the warband will fragment and retreat. Conventional forces can handle cleanup. The Blood Angel extended a gauntleted hand. The Hive stands. 47 million souls live because you ran fast enough to make the impossible possible. The Emperor himself would approve. Barry took the hand, let the Space Marine help him to his feet. Through the shattered ceiling, he could see Kronwald's sky, polluted, gray, but free of corruption's purple taint. In the distance, sirens wailed as Imperial forces moved to secure the Hive. He'd done it. Saved 47 million lives. Proved that mercy and pragmatism weren't mutually exclusive. Shown the 41st millennium that hope could survive, that heroes could exist even in this nightmare future. So why did victory taste like ash? Viella found him 3 hours later in a Medicaid facility, being treated by servitors whose mechanical efficiency stripped all comfort from the healing process. She dismissed them with a gesture, then sat beside his bed, studying him with those unreadable augmetic eyes. "You succeeded," she said simply. "Lord General Kastner has cancelled the Exterminatus. Kronwald stands. You saved more lives today than most Imperial Guardsmen save in entire careers." "But," Barry prompted, hearing the unspoken word, "but 3 other hives fell while you were fighting Zaxion. Peripheral worlds, not strategically critical enough to merit the resources we diverted here. The Chaos forces you didn't engage moved on to easier targets. Estimated casualties, 18 million. Men, women, children. Dead because we gambled on Kronwald and lost forces that could have been deployed elsewhere." Barry felt the words like physical blows. "You're saying I killed 18 million people by saving 47 million. I'm saying the 41st millennium doesn't offer clean victories. Every choice has a cost. Every life saved demands another in payment somewhere else. This is the long war, the eternal calculus of survival. You played hero today and won, but the bill always comes due." She stood, preparing to leave. "Your Speed Force connection will recover. You've proven resilient in ways that surprise even me. Rest, heal, and when you're ready, I have another assignment. Another impossible choice where being fast might not be enough." "Viella," Barry said quietly, "that thing you said about becoming a different kind of monster, about losing the ability to mourn. Do you ever wonder if there's a third option? Something between idealistic hero and pragmatic executioner?" The Inquisitor paused at the door.
For a long moment, she was silent. Then, "Every day, Barry Allen. Every single day." She glanced back, and for just an instant, Barry saw past the augmetics and the cold efficiency to the woman beneath. Someone who'd spent decades making impossible choices and carrying the weight of millions of deaths. "If you discover that third path, I hope you'll share it with me." Then she was gone, leaving Barry alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that the 41st millennium wasn't going to break him, but it might transform him into something he didn't recognize. The speed force flickered in his chest, weak but present, alive, stubborn, refusing to die even in this universe that rejected everything it represented. Barry closed his eyes and thought of home, of Iris, of Central City's skyline, its sunset, of a world where heroes didn't have to choose which millions to save and which to let die.
The Flash remained in the 41st millennium for 3 more months, hunting chaos incursions with Vayella, saving lives measured in millions while watching other millions fall elsewhere. Every victory brought a cost. Every choice demanded sacrifice. The Speed Force connection never fully recovered. The warp's presence ensured he operated at 70% capacity on his best days. But something else changed, slowly, gradually. The Imperium soldiers began to whisper about the Red Comet, the crimson lightning that appeared where hope had died, that fought without corruption, that saved lives others had written off as acceptable losses. A legend grew, spread through Vox channels and soldiers' stories, of something from beyond the stars that proved mercy wasn't weakness. Vayella noticed. "You're becoming dangerous," she told him after their 4th successful mission. "Not to the Imperium, but to its philosophy. Soldiers who meet you start questioning orders, start believing salvation is possible. That kind of hope can destabilize centuries of military doctrine." "Good," Barry replied. "Maybe this millennium needs some destabilization." The Inquisitor didn't argue. Instead, she tasked her savants with researching dimensional rifts, warp anomalies, anything that might return Barry to his home reality. It was a slim hope, but hope nonetheless. On the 97th day, the Speed Force surged unexpectedly during a battle against Orc invaders. Barry felt it, a connection strengthening, reality thinning. The barrier between dimensions was weakening. Not much, not enough for controlled travel, but enough that if he pushed, if he ran faster than he'd ever run before, he might tear through back to his own universe. He told Vayella that night. She nodded, unsurprised. "Then this is farewell," she said. "You gave the Imperium something it hasn't had in 10,000 years, a reminder that heroism exists beyond propaganda and faith, that someone can fight in this hell and emerge with their soul intact. That's worth more than tactical victories. Will you keep looking for that third path, the one between idealism and pragmatism?" Vayella's smile was sad. "I'll try. That has to count for something, doesn't it?" "It counts for everything," Barry said. They shook hands. The Inquisitor who'd spent 60 years executing the impossible calculus of survival, and the hero from another reality who'd refused to accept that hope was heresy. Barry ran. He ran faster than physics allowed, faster than the warp could suppress, faster than the 41st millennium could contain. The Speed Force surged through dimensional barriers weakened by 3 months of his presence. Reality split open, a clean tear this time, controlled and purposeful. He dove through, leaving behind a universe of endless war, and emerged into his own timeline exactly 3 seconds after he'd left. To his friends, to the world, he had barely been gone. But Barry Allen was changed. He carried the weight of the 41st millennium in his soul,
the memory of 47 million lives saved and 18 million lost, the knowledge that sometimes heroism demanded impossible choices, that speed alone couldn't solve every problem. But he also carried something else, proof that even in the darkest universe imaginable, hope could survive, that one person running toward the light could inspire others to follow, that the Flash, in any millennium, in any reality, meant something more than just moving fast. It meant refusing to give up, even when the darkness was absolute, even when mercy was labeled heresy and compassion was called weakness, especially then. In the 41st millennium, legends still whisper of the Red Comet, the crimson lightning that burned without corruption, that saved the unsavable, that proved the Emperor's Imperium didn't have to abandon hope to survive. Some call it myth, others call it propaganda, but those who fought alongside it know the truth. The Flash was real, and for 3 months, the fastest man alive showed the grimdark future what it meant to be a hero.